Hey guys, good morning. We'll wait for another 2-3 minutes and then we'll start.
Hi Vijay, good morning. Hey,
Morning.
Soumya here.
Yes, Sonia. Yeah, good morning. Okay, so let's get started. If people will join, then we'll um, go through the video in case if they're missing anything. Okay, so before we actually start, a couple of things that which let us talk and then we'll get into the discussion. This course is for administration. I think you might already be aware of that, right? This is for Azure administration. Okay. Now, who are those? I mean, who are kind of required to take this course? What are those prerequisites, right? So when we talk about the prerequisites, the expectation is to have an understanding on server management, networking, and some concepts of hypervisor, right? A VMware or what do you call it as Microsoft Hyper-V or Zen server or anything like that. Okay. Now, so what level of knowledge is needed? An intermediate or below intermediate level knowledge is enough, right? So there might be situations where we will be trying to relate things with your, on-premises environment. When we say on-premises, your data centers on your company's environment, right? So that is what the prerequisites for this particular course is. Now, the other thing that what you should be aware is, this course continues for a duration of 45 to 50 hours. If we spend an hour per day, then it will be around 45 days. Or if we spend some 1.5 hour during weekends, we may push that to 30 days or 35 days. Okay, so that's what our plan will be as we move on, but overall it is 45 hours course. Okay, so in this 45 hours we will be covering the course content not only based on what do you call it as the exam perspective, so which is AZ104. We'll also cover, keeping in mind that you guys are going to opt for an administration role, then what are those activities for that which any Azure administrator will perform? And what is that skill he or she should have in order to execute day-to-day activities, right? So the, the course is more, it will be, will be taught keeping these two things in mind. So one, your exam perspective, and two, your role based, right? So that is the other thing that which we should be aware. Okay. So the course content, I'm not going to go through this, but to talk, it will cover the entire, administration related stuff, exam perspective as well as your job. There are certain things which are not there or which will not be validated in your assessment if you go with AZ104 assessment. Example would be your migrations. So this is not there. So, but your job, when you go for a interview tomorrow, then you are expected to have a knowledge on migrations, right? You are expected to have a knowledge on migrations. So that's the reason we included this migrations part as well, where we will be showing you practically how do you migrate your on-premises current environment to Azure Cloud, or maybe you are in AWS or Google Cloud. How do you move to the Azure Cloud, right? So multiple scenarios we will be discussing that as well here. Okay. So that's what little bit about course and then duration. Okay. So let us get into action, right? So the way how we start is we'll first try to understand the basics of cloud computing, general cloud computing basics and terminologies. Few of you might be already aware of this, but you need to kind of allow others to get that knowledge, right? So we'll first go with cloud computing, then we'll go slowly with the overview of Azure, and what is their how they are located, where are all they are located, what are the data centers they have, what are the regions, and so on. Then we'll go with subscriptions and so on from tomorrow. Today it will be more on basics on cloud computing and Azure overall. Okay, so that's the agenda for today. Right. So, as you know, my name is Vijay. A little bit about myself. I I got around 15 years of experience working at various levels of infrastructure management. In the sense, right from desktop support to the solutioning of your infrastructure, which could be your Azure, Citrix, Windows, and VMware. Okay, so that's my experience a little bit, and then. I'm right now a full-time trainer. I'm not working. I just quit my job and I'm fully into this training part. So you will be getting advantage of my experience that whatever I have. So that's where when we try to discuss about real-time scenarios and all those things, that experience will be useful to you and it will be shared as a part of this training. Okay, so without waiting further, let us start. So what is a cloud, right? What is a cloud? So how do you define a cloud service? Now it is not what the image that what you are seeing here, right? So before I talk about cloud service, let us take an example of a Google Drive that what we generally use, right? So you might have a Google account, you got a Google storage, and where you go and put some data, some files and folders, right? Or your personal files and folders. And when you subscribe to your Gmail, they provide you, I think, around 20 GB of space, right? And let us say that you used all that 20 GB. Okay, think that you used all that 20 GB. Now, what you have a requirement is to store additional data, right? Then you go and pay some additional amount to your Google, and then you get some additional space. So what you're doing here, you're paying for whatever the additional stuff you are using. So remember this term, pay for as you use. And then you were using 20 GB, you are expanding that to 50 GB, which means that you are increasing the capacity. You are increasing the capacity. which is nothing but scaling. You call that as a scaling, increasing or decreasing the capacity of anything. Could be a storage or anything, you call it as scaling. So firstly, you paid for whatever you used. And secondly, you expanded the drive as per your requirement. That is scalability. And then you also got availability here. In the sense, Google makes sure that your drive on whatever the storage space where your drive is sitting is available 24/7. That is your availability. And where is this entire data residing? This resides in your service provider's data center, your Google's data center. In that data center, they will have a storage box. In that storage box, you will have your Google Drive. So here the terms that what you need to understand and remember. One is pay for what you use. Second is increase and decrease as per your requirement, which is scalability. And third one is your what do you call it as availability, right? 24/7 availability. And the last one is use the services in your service provider data set. Now this is what your cloud service is all about. So instead of a storage space where we were talking about a single service called a storage service, that can be replaced with multiple services. And that service could be a database service, that could be a blockchain, that could be your AI or machine learning, that can be a network device, might be a firewall or a switch or router whatsoever, or it might be a simple virtual machine that which you use to store some application or data. So if you want to define a cloud service, what it is usage of these services. Now what services? Could be virtual machines, storage, or application, databases, or any service that can be hosted on cloud. Usage of this service. And where do they reside? They reside in a service provider data center, and you pay for what you use, which give you ability to scale your resources as per your requirement, and you get very good SLA in the sense good availability. So that's what a definition of cloud services. Now here you see three definitions which were picked from three sources: Wikipedia, MS Azure, and Amazon. But if you summarize, all these will talk the same definition. Okay, so that's what a definition of cloud service is. And then, okay, so you understood what a cloud service is, right? Now, what are those characteristics any cloud service should have? Right? So when do I call a specific service as a cloud service? Now, here are those five, what do you call it as characteristics, we can call it as, right? So one is on-demand self-service. In the sense, self-service, you're on your own, you're not dependent on somebody else. So whenever there is a requirement, you are performing the activities. That is on-demand self-service. Now, what is that you are going to perform here? So you can provision, you can deploy the resources. When I say resource service, okay, you can deploy resources as service or services as per your requirement. You are not waiting for somebody else to complete your tasks. Now, why this term is coming? Let us say let us compare this with your traditional data center model, okay? So let us say you have a data center of your organization, you got a project ABC. And that project requires some server storage requirement, network devices or whatsoever. Now if it is on-prem, whenever I say on-premises, it is your data center, what you manage, okay? So related to that. So on-premises, you want to deploy these servers, network devices, storage devices for your project called as project ABC. Now, what do then? You go and put a purchase order, then your finance team approves, then you go to the vendor, then they take their own time, they ship the devices, then you rack, stack, patch them, and somebody will install, hypervisor, and then on top of it, operating system, then on top of it, application, and so on. So multiple departments, multiple people, multiple activities, dependence. So when you compare that with your cloud service, you are provided with a portal, or you are provided with what you call it as a command line interfaces, or you are provided with some SDKs where you can use some programming languages to deploy, manage, and maintain things. So this is a portal that which you will be using. Let us say you are talking about the same server which you are deploying. You can do it in few minutes here. Multiple servers, maybe few hours, maybe a day, but not few days, right? So that's where this on-demand self-service will help you to go and provision or deploy and manage and maintain the resources rather depending on multiple teams. The next one is measured service, right? Now, when we were defining the cloud service, right? So we said pay for what you use. That's where measured service is coming into picture. So whatever the service you use, that the cost will be measured. Cost will be measured. And you will be provided with the details of, what is the cost of what resource. So now if you see there is a subscription called as MSDN subscription where we spend an amount of 2000 rupees. Now if you go in detail, then you can download the invoice and try to understand which resource has used how much. That level of detail you can get when you go and look at the cost. So that's where your measured service is coming into picture, right? So it means it's not only you to know what is that you are using, but it has also got some cost analysis which will help you to understand where is the waste. It gives you a good analytical view where you can go and try to understand, oh, okay, this VM, it should not run during off business hours. Let me take it off so that I can save some money. So you get all these advantages. Okay, so you get all these advantages when you kind of move yourself to the cloud service, right? When you move yourself to the cloud service, right? So that is your measured service. And then rapid elasticity. So you can scale, that's what we were saying, right? Scale up, scale down, scale out, scale in. We'll understand these terminologies as we move on. You can increase the capacity. That's where the elasticity word is coming into picture. And then you have resource pool. Now these cloud service providers could be Microsoft Azure or AWS or GCP or anybody for that matter. They have a pool of resources, readily available resources, which they use to cater their customer requirements. Which means there is no situation, there could be no situation as such where you may hear from your service provider, okay, so we are running out of resources or whatsoever, right? So that is resource pooling. And then broad network access. You can access your cloud services from anywhere. You can integrate your current solution, whatever you have in your data centers with your Azure cloud. You can bring multiple cloud services together. Maybe your organization is putting some workloads in AWS, some in Azure, some in GCP, and again some in on-prem. Possible. You can integrate them in a networking layer. Very much possible. So that's what your broad network access is. So any cloud service you take, they will have these characteristics. They will have these characteristics. And then what are the benefits that which me as an organization, when I adopt cloud, what are those benefits I get? What are those benefits? So first and foremost thing is cost, right? Cost. So when we talk about cost, you can divide your cost into two. Okay, so you can divide your cost into two. One you call it as capital expense, right? CapEx. The other one you call it as operational expense. Operational expense. So a few of you might be aware of these terms, but let us discuss this. The amount you spend, the money you spend to purchase something, you call it as capital expense. The amount you spend to manage and maintain your environment or service or whatever, you call it as operational expense. So the day-to-day management and maintenance will come under operational expenses. One-time purchase, whatever you do, it will come into capital expense. Let us talk about the same project, project ABC, which we were discussing. This project ABC has a requirement of few servers, storage device, right? And of course some network devices. Some network. And if you're not into cloud, then what you do? You purchase them, right? You purchase. You are spending some amount here, right? You are spending some amount here. And after 1 year or 2 years, once the project is over, and these devices you might be using or you might not be using. Maybe at one point during the project phase itself, you might be using only 50% of these resources. That means, though you are purchasing, you might not be using 100%, or maybe after some time they might be sitting idle in your data center without being used. But you did put some money there, purchase them. That's how it will be in your traditional data center. But if I go and put the same servers and storage on network on my Azure cloud, then I will go and initially deploy based on my requirement. If the utilization is only 50%, I can reduce the capacity at any point of time. And after 2 years of project, I can get rid of those services that whatever I am using, I no longer will be charged for those services. So you can observe the difference, right? So this is what the difference. So to a maximum extent, you are avoiding your capital expense when you adopt cloud service. And similarly, the operational expenses. If you talk about the same purchase of servers, storage devices, and so on, you may have to maintain this physical hardware. You may have to get the bad ones replaced, bad disks or bad components of your hardware. Maybe you may have to kind of update your firmware on these devices. And if you have a hypervisor on top of it, you may have to maintain the hypervisor. These things you can get rid of when you move to the cloud service. You need not have to bother about your hardware because that is managed by your service provider. You need not have to worry about replacement of faulty components. That is taken care by your service provider. And you need not bother about your hypervisor updates or your, what do you call it as, hardware, firmware updates and so on. So I won't say that you are reducing operational expense to zero, but you can reduce it to maximum extent based on what layers you are managing. So that's where your cost advantage here is, right? That's where your cost advantage. And then you got speed, productivity, and performance. The speed with which you can get the things done, which means that better productivity, which means better performance. Performance here could be the performance of your resources, what you use on cloud, or the performance of your team, right? So those are the advantages. And then you got global scale. So all these service providers has got their presence across different geographical locations. They have their presence across the globe. If you look at Azure, here are their data centers across different countries across the globe. Because they have their presence across the globe, today if you are in India, you may want to expand your business to UK or US, you can do it with ease. You can go and deploy your infrastructure with ease. When you compare this to the old days where you may have to go and set up your data centers, and of course you need to have a real estate and then data center, then power cooling, purchase servers, network and whatnot. So you are getting away from all those, what you call it as, um, all those activities that which you used to take care. Of course, there are situations where people will have to wait for years to get permissions from the governments and so on, right? So that is gone now. So that's where your global presence is helping you. And then you got security, right? So when we talk about security, it's more the cloud stack, and then anything that which sits under the cloud stack could be the hardware, access to the data centers, hardening of your hypervisor and so on, that is taken care by your service provider, in our case Azure. So it will be, so how do you trust, right? The trust is another important factor here when we talk about security. Is my data safe? Is my data safe? Of course, yes. So they have their own auditing methods, they have their own, what you call it as permissions and approvals from security governing bodies. So that's clear there, right? So, but again, it's up to you as a customer also. You need to take care about security when it comes to your OS layer, application layer, or data layer, whatsoever. So it's a collective responsibility. Right? It's a collective responsibility. So what did we discuss so far is we discussed, the definition of cloud, what it is, and you understood what are those characteristics any cloud should have, and then you also got to know what are the benefits of cloud computing, right? So these are the benefits. Now, before I ask you if you have any questions, let us quickly complete this perspective as well, and then we'll pause a while and then we'll see if you have any questions. Okay. Now, your cloud can be categorized into three or four. There is something called as community cloud as well, which is not listed here. So, but predominantly we talk about public, private, and hybrid cloud. Most often, these are the terms that which you hear. Now we need to understand these things, right? So Azure, the general Azure that what we are going to go and use is a public cloud. Okay. Now, what is a public cloud, by the way? So in a public cloud, the infrastructure, in the sense the physical server, storage, network, and the hypervisor, whatever you use, will sit in your service provider's data set. Which means if you are using Microsoft Azure, then obviously the servers that whatever you deploy will be sitting on their hardware, which resides in their data centers. And so as GCP or AWS or wherever it is. So that is your public cloud. So in the private cloud, when contrast to the public cloud, your cloud will be residing in your data centers. That's what private. It is private your organization. But why do you have this private cloud requirement, by the way? Maybe you are into some banking or financial related, services, right? Your company is what do you call it as regulatory requirements or compliance requirements may not allow you to put some applications on cloud. Then you can think of going with a private cloud. You have multiple solutions in private clouds. You can go with VMware private cloud, or you have Azure Stack, and you can also go with the OpenStack kind of solutions, which runs on top of your hypervisor layer. But again, in the private cloud, as I said, because you are putting that in your data center, you are responsible for end-to-end management, right from the hardware layer till the your OS and data and application layer, which is no different from your traditional data center. So why do you want to use this? Only thing could be, your data worry or your compliance and regulatory requirements. That is your private. And then comes your hybrid cloud, right? So hybrid here means you have presence in both. Maybe you're using some private cloud or you have your own data center, and you also have presence in what you call it as the hybrid public cloud, which is nothing but provided by your service provider. So if you have presence in both public and private cloud, then you are called as hybrid cloud user. Okay, so that's what that intersection region between those two circles, what you see is your hybrid. Okay, so before I move further, if you have any questions on whatever we discuss, so please, then we'll try to answer the question and we'll go further. Any questions from anyone? So speak out, guys. So it needs to be little interactive. Otherwise, I will be a little boring. It will be for me as well. Speak. So don't hesitate in asking the questions. Soumya, you got any questions?
Not yet, Vijay. This is the starting, right? So let's get into the work. Then maybe I'll get some doubts.
Okay, so far I explained. Do you have any questions on that?
No, right now I'm clear.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And Jashwant, I think Nani and other guys.
No questions. I'm clear. I'm good.
Okay.
Hi, this is Satish, Vijay.
Yeah, Satish. Yeah.
So when we launch these VMs, normally, like, do we have any renewal time for the renewal time? Normally, like in physically, data center for every network devices or storage devices, we have some lifetime, like end of life. So
Yeah.
do we have in this?
Yeah. So ultimately, you are putting your OS, right? That's where your solution starts, right? So you deploy your operating system. So whatever the end of life your OS will have, whether it is on premises or wherever, the same will apply here on cloud, right? So there might be some situations where you have an extended support because you are using cloud. For example, Windows 2008 R2, you get an extended support. But those whatever the end of life terms that whatever are applicable in general are applicable here as well. Okay, so that maybe I think I'll try to explain you when we use VMs concept. But yes, that is applicable. Okay.
Yeah, sure. That's it.
Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so let's go further. So whatever you use on cloud, okay, so whatever you use on cloud, you use it as a service, right? You use it as a service. Now, whether it is a VM, whether it is a database, whether it is a web application, or whether it is a network device, storage, or whatsoever. So use these as what? Service. So use this as a service. So that's where you call them as services. So you use them as a service. Your service provider will also sell them as services. So those services you can categorize into many, but whatever we listed here are three, right? IaaS, infrastructure as service, PaaS, platform as service, SaaS, software as service. Now, depending on what is that you are using on cloud, the resource that whatever you use and deploy will fall into one of these categories, one of these three categories, either infrastructure as service, platform as service, or software as service. Based on what service you use, the layers that which you manage will change. The layers that what you manage will change. So if you are using infrastructure as service, you are managing only this part. If you are using platform as service, you are managing only this part. And if you are using software as service, you are directly using the service. Now let us try to understand a few things clearly here. Let us try to compare this with our traditional data center model, in the sense your on-premises environment versus your cloud services. So in the traditional data center model, all your services, in the sense a physical server and physical server attached storage and network devices, and if you have a hypervisor like VMware, ESXi, Zen server, or Hyper-V, on top of it, if you have a VMs hosting operating system, on top of it, you have some applications, middleware, data, and whatsoever. Everything is managed by you as an organization. That's what your traditional data center model. Now, let us say you adopted cloud and you are using a service called as infrastructure as service. In the infrastructure as service, as we were discussing earlier, your physical servers resides in your service provider data center, which means that you need not have to worry about them. No management and maintenance of them. And of course, the storage attached to the physical servers as well, and the network attached to the physical servers. You need not have to manage. And if you're talking about hypervisor, if it is Microsoft Cloud, then Azure Cloud, then it is a Hyper-V. They have their own hypervisor called as Hyper-V. That is also managed by your service. Then what is that you are managing here? Your operating system, your virtual machine, and applications data that which you put on top of it. That is your responsibility to manage. So you are still responsible for patching of your operating system. You are still responsible for performance of your operating system. You are still responsible for the high availability of your OS layer. But when it comes to the hardware, hypervisor, and all those things, it is the responsibility of your service provider, in our case, Microsoft Azure. So when you move to infrastructure as service, you are not managing some layers which includes your physical server, hypervisor, storage, and network layers. But you are still managing a part of whatever you used to manage in your traditional data center model, which is the operating system and applications and data that whatever you put on top of that operating system. That is your infrastructure as service. Now the other thing is platform as service. Now to explain this, let me take an example. Okay, so let me take an example so that you guys understand it clearly. Take an example. Let us say on premises, in the sense in your data center, you have a SQL server, and this SQL server may be running SQL 2012, maybe running on Windows Server, Windows 2016 maybe, right? And this is used by your application, this Windows Server, this SQL server. And where is this right now? It is in on-prem data set. When I say on-prem, it is your own data set. Now you as an organization opted to move this service to cloud. So your decision is to move this service to cloud, which means you are moving your Windows 2016 hosted with the SQL service 2012 to Azure cloud. So you have an option here to move to infrastructure as service. Then how is that? In infrastructure as service, what I do is I will build a Windows 2016, right, server, and install SQL 2012 and move your database, right? Move your database. That's what you do in infrastructure as service. That's where your operating system, on top of your operating system, you are installing the application and you are moving the database. Now, in contrast, in platform as service, what will happen is you get a readily available, usable database service. You get a readily available and usable database service. All you need to do is configure, move and configure your database. Move and configure. So you are not installing operating system here. You are not installing SQL application here. You have operating system on top of its SQL, a readily available solution. Use a portal, deploy a database, move your existing database to the cloud. Now what is that you got rid here? No operating system management, no SQL Server application installation, no patching of your operating system, no patching of your SQL applications. That's what your task does. It's not necessarily a SQL, it could be a web application. You may have an Apache or IIS web services running on premises. You can move it to infrastructure as service, or you can move it to platform as service. So there are multiple such applications which are readily available to go and use them, rather you managing right from the OS layer to data layer of application layer. So based on your requirement, you can choose one of these. Both will help you to get your solution, but which one is what I have to choose? If you want more control, right from your OS layer till your SQL application layer, then you may go with infrastructure as service, but more management. If you want to get rid of management and headache of patching and all those things, high availability, then you can go with PaaS, but less control, because your OS layer, your SQL software layer, everything is managed by your service provider. So based on your flexibility, your organization has to make these calls during the design phase. And then you take a call of whether you want to move with infrastructure as service or platform as service. Right? So that's where your platform as service is coming. So that's where you see your network, physical server, hypervisor, And then operating system which you use to manage in your infrastructure as service is no longer managed. And then the application or middleware, that whatever you have, or configuration data, whatever you sit, that's where the application and data, the configuration and data is what you will be managing. And then the application itself is managed by your, I mean, when I say application, the software itself is managed by your service. And then you have a last one, which is software as service. Here you have a readily usable application. You need not have to kind of, you're not putting any data here. You're not configuring anything here. You just go and subscribe and use it. That's where your SaaS application is all about. In SaaS applications, you go and use it. Example could be Microsoft Office 365 or the Zoom meeting, that whatever is using, these type of applications will come under SaaS category, where I did not have to worry anything even about the Zoom application and other stuff. I'll just subscribe and use it. Right? So these are all different types of services. So when you move your applications to cloud, somewhere before the migration itself, you will be assessing where my workloads will fit, whether they fit in infrastructure, whether it in platform, whether they fit in SaaS. Okay, so this is about your cloud service. Okay, so these are the services, but how do I access this service? How do I access these services? So anybody here who doesn't understand these terms, hypervisor, virtual machines, and other stuff, anybody here, then I'll discuss, otherwise I'll skip this part. So anybody here who doesn't understand what hypervisor is, what virtual machine is? Okay, so silence means I just taking it as you guys know it. If you don't know it, then do let me know. I'll spend 5-10 minutes in explaining these terms. But otherwise, you're expected to have knowledge on this. Okay, so things to know: hypervisor, virtual machines, physical and virtual servers. Hypervisor, at a very high level, it's a small piece of software which sits on a hardware layer, which will help you to host multiple operating systems on a physical hardware device. That is your hypervisor. And whatever these OS or operating system which reside on a hypervisor, you call it as virtual machines. Okay, so environment with hypervisor, you call it as virtual environments. Environments without virtual, the environments without hypervisor, you call it as physical server environments or physical. Okay, so that's about this. If you don't know, then do let me know, I can explain. Okay, so we talked about, we did talk about the services, right? So now, how do I know what are the services which are there in Azure Cloud? How do I know what are the services which are available in Azure Cloud? So Azure comes with a portal called as Marketplace, okay? So which we call it as Azure Marketplace. Right, so Azure Marketplace is a portal where you can go and look at what are the different services which are available on Azure Cloud. Maybe you might want to use some database application, then whether you want to know, and maybe you want to know whether it is available on Azure Cloud or not. So here is the portal which may help you to go and look at the list of services which are available for their customers. If you want to look at, let us say, a network solution or a database solution, then you can go and search for those type of products here. So they had categorized these into different services, like browse apps by categorization. Maybe if you want to look at from servers related stuff, then you may want to go with compute. Or if you want to look for database solutions, then you can go and look at under the database what are the different database solutions they have that can be hosted on Azure Cloud, right? and then DevOps, and multiple things. Right? The same things are available here in the portal for deployment as well. Right? You go to all services, you see the same categories that whatever you see here under, what do you call it as, marketplace. So whatever you see here might be before you subscribe yourself, or generally if you want to go and see whether the solution that whatever I am looking is available or not, you can come here to the Azure Marketplace and then look and search for the service. That's what your marketplace portal is all about. Okay. Now, how do I know what are the different regions my Azure has got its presence? Azure has its presence across multiple geographical locations. Right? They have their presence in Americas, they have their presence in Europe, they have their presence in Middle East, Africa, they have their presence in Asia Pacific. Right? So they have their presence across different regions or different geographies. So Americas is one geography, okay, and then Europe is another geography, and then Africa, Middle East is another geography, and then Asia Pacific is another geography. And each geography has got multiple regions, right? So this is one geography, it has got multiple regions: West US, Central US, East Canada. These are all regions, or what do you call it as, locations. Brazil South, and so as in Europe, so as in India, they have presence in South India, Central India, and then West India. Right? Now these are all the locations where they have their data centers. That's what we can say. Right? They have their data centers. Now you see, let us try to understand this map a little bit so that you guys are comfortable in understanding some terminologies. Okay. Now you see there is a circle which is the available region, right? These are all the regions as a set, which are part of a geography. So your geography will have multiple regions. Now, if it is a blue color filled circle, that region is what you call it as operational. Okay, so that is operational. And if you have this dotted circle, you can see it, announced region, right? That is announced region. There are some regions which are announced. Let me look at one for you. If there is any. Yeah, so Greece, you can see it, right? There is one location called as Greece here, right? So this is an announced location, which means that they are going to go and have their data centers here, right? So that is the announced location. And then there is something called as availability zones, right? Now you see there are some regions with this diamond symbol, right? Not all the regions has got these diamond symbols, right? So West US too, Central US, Central Canada Central, and East US too, all these got the diamond symbol in them. Then what is this availability zone? What is this availability zone? So let us try to understand this. Okay, so let us try. So as I said, Microsoft has got geographies, and within that geography they got what you call it as region, right? So let us say this is a region. Let us assume that this is South India region. And South India, it is located region, the data centers are located in Chennai, near to us. Okay, Chennai. So within this region, they have, or they may have, one or more data centers. They may have one or more data centers. Let us assume that they have 3 data centers. Now, in order to run these data centers, you obviously require power, then cooling, and of course, network. you require power, cooling and network. So in a normal situation, without availability zones, all these data centers will be using same power, same cooling and same network. This will be the situation under the normal situation without availability zone. So all your data centers has a shared power, cooling and network. Then what is the problem here? If power is gone, the entire region itself goes down, right? Because all the data centers in that region are accessing a shared power, common power. So to address these type of problems, so as with cooling, so as with your network, if network is gone, then entire region is not accessible. So to address these issues, what Microsoft did is they introduced a concept called as zones. So each region may have multiple zones. Let us say this is zone 1 and this is zone 2. And this is zone 3. So each zone may have one or more data centers. Now your zone will have data centers. It will have one or more data centers. So your region is categorized into zones and each zone will have one or more data centers. So when we talk about the same power, cooling and network, now each zone will have its own power, cooling and network. Each zone will have its own power, cooling and network. So which means zone 1 will have its own power, cooling and network. Zone 2 will have its own power, cooling and network. So as your zone 3. Now what is the advantage here? If a power is gone, it is not impacting the entire region. So as if the network is gone, it is not impacting the entire region. So as cooling, which was the case earlier. Then how is that it is going to help you as a customer? Let us take an example of an application. Okay, so let us take an application example. Let us take an example of a web server. I got a web server application which is hosted on, let us say, 9 servers, pool of 9 servers. So my end users will be accessing one of these 9 servers. If I don't have zones, I might lose all these 9 servers if I put that in a Chennai region without zones. Let us say if I have a zone, then what I do is I'll go and put my first web server in this zone, second web server in this zone, third web server in this zone, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth. So I'm spanning my web servers across zones. Now if there is a problem with power, it may impact one of the zone, which means that 3 servers are not available, but I still have 6 of my servers up and running. That's what your zones will bring to the table. They bring high availability. If you are deploying a critical application, and if the region wherever you are deploying this application has got availability zones, use them. That doesn't cost anything more. That doesn't cost anything extra. But you get better availability, which means that better SLA. So that is the advantage of availability zones. Now, Chennai don't have availability zone. Don't assume that this doesn't have availability zone. Okay, so to explain, the scenario where you don't have availability zone, I listed. Maybe you can go with central US, east US, what kind of. So, but they are deploying availability zone in central India. Right? You will be getting that in center. This is your availability zone. Right? So, geographies, regions, and then availability zones. So, any questions on this one? Any questions on the availability zones?
No, we are good.
Okay, Arif. Okay, so I'll take it as no. So what we do is we'll stop here. Okay, so we'll continue with our discussion tomorrow. We'll get into further details of Azure, and then we'll understand Azure portal and how does Azure work and all those things. We'll see tomorrow. Okay, so tomorrow we'll be starting our discussion on Azure portals and then how exactly the backend services on Azure will work and so on. Okay. Right. So if you have questions, you ask. Otherwise, I'm done for today.
Thanks, Vijay.
Thanks, Vijay.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Vijay.